So we are back for episode 8 of season 2, Interview with the Vampire. And this is the season finale. And the title of this episode is called And That's the End of It. There's Nothing Else. And that could not be more further than the truth than being further from the truth, because we find out very hard truths in this episode, and you really get the meaning of sleeping with your enemy. So the episode opens up. We're in the crypt and it's showing all the tombstones of prior vampires, including Nicky. His tombstone, Nicholas de la Font, 1769 to 1796. We also hear Louis screaming because, mind you, Louis has been banished to the crypt, so he's been buried alive. And we hear him screaming because he's dying from starvation. Louis is back narrating, and he says that at this time he could feel that Claudia was dead. He knew that she was dead. Louis says that as he is screaming and pretty much disintegrating in this tomb, he can feel the rocks around his flesh. They're starting to heal into his flesh, and he says that they are still there in real time as he's telling Daniel this. Armand interjects and says that he could have them removed, and Daniel makes a statement and he says, "How do you know they're not removed?" And he's just lying to you for the effect. That statement right there really does foreshadow the rest of the episode, because Daniel really picks up on things, and we as the audience kind of like, why is he questioning it? But he really brings it full circle. So Armand claims that for saving Louis, he was demoted because at this time Santiago is running the coven, and Santiago believes that Armand helped save Louis, so he's been demoted and pretty much he's now a little scoundrel of the coven. And when Louis is telling of his time and everything that has happened, he's doing the same thing that a lot of people would do. Would I have done anything differently? And he thinks that he doesn't, because he still sees himself kissing Lestat, loving Lestat, wanting Claudia. He still sees all these things. And Armand at this time says that he saved Louis by swapping the coffin that he was in. And we see that he poured some of his blood in the rock so that the blood could get through. And that brought Louis back to life pretty much, because he was screaming out from starving so much because he hadn't had any blood. So when Louis gets out of the coffin, he is full of rage, as he rightfully should be, and he is keen to act on it. He has gone mad. He has left the coven and left Paris for now. He's kind of wandered on this faraway villa where he just started killing on a rampage. And he uses this old abandoned crypt to stay in there and kind of build and plan his revenge. And because he's gone mad, he's talking to himself, and he's also talking to these corpses as if they can respond to him. And we see images where the corpse themselves are speaking to him and like giving him clues on how to better perfect his plan. During all this, he also hears Armand talking to him, trying to get to him, telepathically. And Armand is telling him to leave Paris. And he pretty much like telling him, like, shut up. I don't want to hear nothing you got to say. Just don't be there when I get there. And one thing to note was that Louis asked Armand, did he save him at the trial? And Armand said yes. But his yes sounded uncertain, like hesitant, as if he knew he was lying, but he didn't want Louis to know he was lying. But when Louis asked him, did he pull him out of the wall? His yes was much more certain. It felt more like he knew for sure, like, yeah, I did that. He could say that with confidence. In real time, Daniel is asking Louis, why did he even trust Armand to tell him what he has going on? Because Armand pretty much has played both sides of the fence. He has betrayed Louis to the coven, and then also at the same time, Armand knows that Louis is planning on killing the coven. So why would he not warn his coven? He's been a leader of for 200 years. Daniel is starting to point out that Armand is really untrustworthy. He can't be trusted. He plays both sides. And Armand claims to not have known the whole plan. Bullshit. He always feigned ignorance. Louis planned on killing everybody, and he was willing to die as well. So he went in there with the mindset that if I have to die, I'm going to kill as many as I can take with me. So Louis goes to explain that he planned on doing a fire because when the vampires go to their coffins, they pretty much diminish all of their other senses. So they're very vulnerable while they're in the coffin. So he knew that was the perfect opportunity to take out as many of them as he could, which he did. He went down there and set everything ablaze with gas and fire. And during this time, he finds Claudia's journals and takes them with him. And that's how we get Claudia's journals in real time. And so the rest of the vampires that were able to escape, he was able to kill some of them on the way out. Celeste and Estelle are blown up because he hotwired their motorcycles, I believe. And they blew up while trying to get away. And they think it's another coven after them. So Santiago, we see him escaping through the tunnels, and because I believe Celeste or Estelle is one of his fledgling, he can pick up on their distress. And when they blow up, he feels it and he calls out like he's like upset. And so that's when Louis telepathically gets to him. He's like, "Hey, Francis." And Santiago knows that it was Louis. And we get to the point where he sees Louis's old coffin as he's going through the tunnels, and he like, that motherfucker Armand, like he knows that he got you out, and he wants to take all the credit for what they did to Claudia, and he's really rubbing it in, talking about they put her ashes on the popcorn, he used her ashes to jerk off to. And it's like, I thought for a split second, even though Claudia is a little bit older in this adaptation, the fact that Claudia is a child and Santiago is an adult character bragging about jacking off to a child's ashes, it's just like, I don't know, it's just something I just caught really quick. But I was like, Santiago, see, that's why you deserve to get chopped. So Louis is pretty much antagonizing him, getting into his mind. We know that Santiago is his alter ego. His real name is Francis, and he took on this alter ego after begging his maker, and his maker just kind of was nonchalant, like, I don't give a damn what you call yourself. And Louis picked on him for his penis size and everything. He knew he had a small dick, allegedly. So Santiago is livid. So he comes out from under the tunnels ready to attack. And Louis comes out and slices his head off with a hatchet, killing him. And he like, yeah, say that shit about Claudia to my face. And I was like, yes, Louis, because you did leave Claudia hanging when she told you about Armand. And you was like, no, he wouldn't do that. And now she got to be dead for you to get your shit together and do what you should have done the first time, Daddy Lou. But either way, after the killings, Louis is back at his apartment with Armand, Lord, and he asks Armand when did he start lying to him, and Armand lies again and claims that it was after Madeline was turned, because when he came back, he claims that the coven was waiting on him, and they were pretty much like, they rewrote the script. It's gonna include Claudia and Louis, and you either go along or we'll off you, pretty much. So he claims that because he didn't know Louis's love for him and whether it was going to be true or not, he stood true with the coven. So Louis asked Armand, well, is Lestat still in Paris? And he says yes. And he says, well, wake him up pretty much when they go to go see him. And Armand is telling him he can make it up to him. And Louis is like, you can never make it up to me. Claudia is dead. There's nothing that you can make up to him. So later on that night, not Claudia, but Armand and Louis go together to this lair where they see Lestat. And Armand says that Lestat came home because it used to be Magnus's lair, and Magnus is Lestat's maker. And when they first come in, Lestat is crouched. He just seems so demure and vulnerable, and he's talking softly, like this very reserved tone. And he's asking Louis, did he get enough rest? This killing spree that he went on, has it helped him? And Louis just kind of looking at him like, you motherfucker. Because in Louis's mind, Lestat is a part of the reason why Claudia is dead. And so Lestat sees Armand behind him, talking about, oh, you got the gremlin with you. And pretty much Louis is like, I've come to kill you. The fact that you came over here and you crossed the ocean just to come rehearse a play that will kill your daughter and burn her alive. And he was like, I've come to kill you. And Lestat kind of nonchalantly says, well, no, you can't. And then Armand is in the back talking about, well, your maker burned. You can burn. And that's when Lestat drops the bomb and he says he has the blood of Akasha in him, an ancient blood. And he has to be willing to die, and he's not in the mood. And so Louis and Armand both have to deal with the fact that they cannot take him down. And I think that's so interesting because going back to season one, does that does that mean that Lestat was at least aware of the fact that he knew that Louis wanted to hurt him, and he went along with it in his mind, thinking that he was going to get the victor? But I think he understands why Louis would want to off him sometimes. Like he knows that this is hard for Louis. So Louis, being the player pimp that he is, Louis know how to pivot. I'm serious, he does, because he was like, you know what? I may not be able to kill you physically, but I can kill you. I could kill you in ways more than one. And he said, let me give you your death. And he goes over there and kisses Armand and says Armand is gonna be his man, and they're gonna live together happily ever after. And he will spend the rest of his days trying to find some pale version of him to make up for him not being with him so he won't be lonely. I was like, Louis, you know how to cut somebody with your words. you He knows what to say to hurt somebody's feelings. And that's why I say, when you look back on it, Louis, you know why you got your ass whipped in season one. But you can tell that hurts Armand, and I mean it hurts Louis. It hurts Lestat to see it, but Lestat is quick to recover too, and he kind of acts it off nonchalantly, like, "Well, okay, enjoy him for however long it'll last." And Louis kind of look at him like, "Bitch, please," and him and Armand walk off. Daniel, in real time, Daniel be asking the right questions. He asked Louis, what does he mean? What does he think Lestat meant by that? And Louis is like, he just meant it because he was jealous. He was jealous that I was gonna not be with him, and he just hoped that Armand and I don't last. And it kind of ended trying to say that, and with him and Armand being together for 77 years now, and they really harping on this narrative that they went to all these other places, and they went to Dubai, or they went to New York, all the places you can think of, and they did all these romantic things. And that's just like their way of wrapping it up in a bow. And they end the session, and Armand makes he makes the effort to let Louis know that Lestat loved him, and loved him so much that he knows it was very hard to see them leave together. And that was just such an interesting thing to say. And Daniel once again picks up on that. So he ends the recording, and he follows up on statements that Louis made earlier to just kind of get some clarity, it seems. One of the questions he asked was, how many soldiers did Lestat mindfuck out of the house when in season one Louis had came back from I think it was with Noah, the young guy he used to, you know, have relations with, I'll say. And he also asked him, where was Sam, the vampire from the coven? Because you have him standing beside Armand, but then you also have him down in the dungeon putting you in the coffin. And he's like, oh, it could have been a mistake. And then he says that Lestat possibly like mind tricked 30 soldiers out of the house. And he starts to imply that there was more than one person there who could have saved him. And Louis not buying it, but we can see Armand is getting anxious and nervous. And he's like, yeah, he picking up on it. He's trying to say that Daniel's just trying to blow up something. And you can see that Louis is starting to consider it, but he doesn't want to believe. He's like, no, that's not possible. And so he starts to get up, and Daniel starts reading over the script, like some stage directions. And Louis starts to pick up on that don't sound right. And Daniel is reading the margins, and he gives him the script. And that's when we learn Armand did not witness the play. He directed it. He knew it all along. Those margins in the that was his writing. And then that's when it goes and we see other scenes of when he actually was there rehearsing it with Lestat. And Lestat even then was lashing out during the rehearsal because he was like, "What do you all plan to do to keep Claudia? These little cheap mind tricks will not work on her. She's too strong for that. Like, y'all are underestimating her strength." And Louis is realizing in real time Armand was the culprit. And Daniel was telling him, "You were supposed to die with Claudia. He did not save you. Lestat saved you." And Armand, that little fucking gremlin, that little motherfucker, he just, and it's, oh, it's just the fact that you know it was him the whole time, and how much time was wasted that you, I mean, you know that Louis had to be have longing for Lestat this entire time, and he wanted to hold on to that anger because in his mind, Lestat was a part of the reason that Claudia is dead. But no, it's been the man you've been laying with for damn near 80 years. And he's been feeling these feelings throughout the years. And I feel as if that's why Daniel is even here to begin with. And Armand pretty much said that. Louis was not happy with Armand, but he felt probably indebted to him. And he felt as if he can't go back to Lestat, not because he doesn't want to. He feels as if that will go against his moral standing because he killed Claudia in his mind. But to know that no, it was Armand. And Daniel is like he got it the transcript from Sam, who's now a DJ, who he gave it to the Talamasca. He was their connect. That's how he figured out now Sam is still alive. And yeah, he's working as a DJ. And they found out through Sam the real story. And he was like, "But you killed all the other vampires who could have told you the truth because you believed in Armand." And that's when you kind of have to look at Louis a little bit because there were so many times that Armand was showing that he was dishonest. Even even at the end, after everything that happened with Claudia, you already knew he was dishonest, and yet you still went to him and still confided in him. I guess because he felt as if, you know, he didn't have no other option. So when all this happened, Louis is livid. He walk out the room. You can hear Armand in the back room like pleading with him. And Daniel's at his computer and his IM telling him like pack it up, get out of there. And then boom, you hear this big crash against the wall. Like the wall starts to shatter and crack. The glass above it, it's just shattered because Louis throws Armand against the wall. Daniel goes in there and sees it, and Louis pretty much like, "I'm done with your ass. Stay away from Daniel." And he tells Daniel, "Thank you for revealing the truth to him." But I think that's a truth that he kind of probably always felt deep down. And he tells him he gonna wire him the money, and he sets his computer on fire. So Louis travels back to New Orleans, and while he's coming en route, there's a hurricane coming in. And he goes to their old place where him and Claudia and Lestat used to live, 1132 Rue Royale Street. And it's now a tourist attraction telling the story of the two brothers and the child bride or whatever. I think it was something like that. And Louis feels that there's another vampire present, and he sees this guy that's catching rats. And he follows this man, and they get to really this dilapidated house where we see Lestat, and he's practicing music. And this is Lestat's fledgling. And we know that Lestat feels that Louis is there, but he doesn't really know that Louis is there for real because the little vampire, he's like, "Who was that?" And he's like, "It's Louis." And he's like, "This is Louis." So Lestat talks about Louis to this fledgling. So Lestat is missing Louis, and he tells him to leave. And Lestat turns around eventually to face Louis, and they interact and they're talking and they reunite. And you could just feel all of the emotions and the sadness and just the the wanting of each other, but also the fear because they've been apart for so long. And it really dawns on Lestat that Louis is there in the flesh when he starts to walk towards him. And Lestat kind of feels like cathartic, it seems to be. He looks haggard. He looks broke down. He ain't doing good at all. He claimed he rehearsing for his tour, but he looked toe up from the flow up. And Louis is there looking polished and everything compared to him. And Lestat, goes to start to explain his apologies and how they were both so horrible to each other. And Louis stops him and he's like, "No, I came to apologize because I didn't realize the gift that you gave me in vampirism. And I didn't see it for what it was. And I took that out on you and I wanted to hurt you because I felt as if you had hurt me." And that's very true. And we see that, he felt as if Lestat took his humanity from him, and he knew that Lestat's deep desire for his love and affection was the one thing that he could use to kind of even the play field in his mind. And so they start talking about September 8th, 1973, and that is the night that Armand called to Lestat when Louis had went outside into the sun. And he asked Louis, did he harm himself? And Louis says, yes, he was in a dark place. And it was about the death of Claudia. And then Lestat also talks about how he felt so responsible having to see her die like that. She turned to him, and to see the look on her face, she looked at him like a child would to their father. And he knows that he was never the father he should have been to Claudia, and they embrace. And you just see this big release, especially for Lestat. Like, it feels so, the moment feels cathartic and also full circle, but also you get to reunite and really just let whatever you feel as if your sins may be, just let them fall where they may. And they embrace. And then we transition to Daniel. This is after the book has been released. So Daniel is now on a book tour. And he's having an interview, and we could tell the interviewer does not believe any that he has written about. He feels like it's another Bigfoot. But we see Daniel with glass shades now, which is interesting because he goes outside and it's nighttime, and he calls Louis, and he's pretty much telling Louis like the book is a success. Have you read the book? And Louis like, not yet. And then Daniel says, have you heard from my maker? Armand turned his ass out of spite, which is so fucked up. And Louis is like, I'm so sorry for leaving you there with him. And he was like, get out of Dubai, because we now hear that all of these vampires are pissed off at Louis in their mind for exposing vampirism in this book. So they really want to get at him. And he like, no, I'm right here in Dubai. Where I'm at, I'm going to tell you my location. Come get me if you really about it. Because he says, I am the night. But I thought what was another beautiful thing is that we see him like fully accept his vampirism in this full moment. And then we also still see his relics of humanity with the portrait of Paul in the back and the casing of Claudia's dress that she died in. And I feel as if Claudia is a representation of Grace. So that's kind of like Grace and Claudia together. So I feel as if he's reconciled who he once was as a human and has really accepted who he is now as a vampire. And he's ready to go full out. And that's the end of season 2. Season 3 does premiere in June, so I'm very excited about that. And I'll go over my hopes for season 3 as well. But if you enjoyed it, like it, and tell me if anything I might have missed out or your perspective as well. Bye.